I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Camarillo City Council. And may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Kilby? Councilmember Martinez-Bravo?
Here.
Councilmember Tennyson is absent for the record. Vice Mayor Tremblay? Here. And Mayor Santangelo?
Here.
Would you like me to open the sand? So I'm going to open the Camarillo Sanitary District meeting as well for August 25th, and let the record reflect that all the directors except one is here.
Okay, the purpose for opening at this hour is to go into closed session. I'll have the city attorney read the closed session items.
Yes, thank you. We have one matter related to the sanitary district that's listed on the agenda for existing litigation. We also have 3 matters on the city council agenda. There's one anticipated litigation matter, an existing litigation matter, and initiation of litigation. And if there's any reportable action, I will make that report at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, and with that, we will recess into closed session.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Camarillo Board of Library Trustees. Let the record reflect that all board members are present except Director Tennyson. Would Mayor Santangelo please lead us in the flag salute?
Please stand. Hand over heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mayor. Are there any amendments to the agenda? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. We will now move to public comments. Are there any members from the community who would like to address the library board specifically? Okay. Seeing none, we will move to the consent calendar. May I have a motion and a second to approve the consent calendar?
I'll move the approval.
Second.
Okay, please vote. Okay, and that passes 4-1 with Councilmember Tennyson absent. Okay, we will now move to our discussion items. Will staff please present the report?
Good afternoon, Madam President and fellow library trustees. The Camarillo Public Library is excited to announce that we've selected Clark and Division by Naomi Hirahara for Camarillo Reads 2023. A Pasadena native, Naomi Hirahara is the Edgar Award-winning author of Maz Arai and Ellie Rush Mysteries. The book, Clark and Division, have been praised as Mystery of the Year by New York Times, and the Washington Post said it was a crime fiction at its best. The author event will take place on Saturday, September 30th at 2 p.m., this time at the Rancho Campana High School Performing Arts Center. Copies of the book are available at the library, both digitally and in print, now. This year, the library will also host additional Camarillo Reads programming that relate to Japanese Americans, including a children's author talk, a traditional Japanese dance, a calligraphy workshop, and a Japanese koto musical performance. In addition, we are fortunate to host a professional speaker, Sam Miyahara, who will give a presentation on his experience living in Hard Mountain, Wyoming, prison camp during World War II. Details on all the events are listed on our Camarillo Public Library website, and we're just very fortunate and grateful for the generosity that the Friends of the Camarillo Library provide for all of our programming for Camarillo Reads. I'm going to discuss the next agenda item, which is the City of Camarillo Public Library Annual Report. And here are some of our highlights from last fiscal year, July 2022 to June 2023. We started with expanded hours of operation, which include 7 days a week service and evenings. The library was one of just 20 applicants to receive a $17,325 grant from California State Library to support our Cam I Am Sustainable Initiative, which featured community conversations and event as part of our Sustainable Neighborhood series. Workshop topics included composting, vegetarian cooking, upcycling, food waste, water conservation, beekeeping, marine and ocean life, and solar energy. 14 workshops were completed with 313 people participating. The library also launched Camarillo's Great Outdoors, a service that lends backpacks and beach coolers to support exploration and visits to local hiking and beach spots. 16 kids' backpacks include a compass, binoculars, and children's books about wildflowers, birds, mammals, and trees. We also have 2 beach coolers also available for checkout and include a kite, a volleyball beach mat, reusable ice packs, and sunscreen. Starting a book club has never been so easy for Camarillo residents. The library launched Book Club in a Bag, which contains a wide selection of new titles, along with 8 copies of a book, information for the book club leader, and a list of discussion questions. Patrons can request a title through the library website and can be checked out for 6 weeks. The library, this past March, celebrated our Sweet 16th birthday, which included a selfie-ready balloon arch that was played for the whole month. In our collection, the library acquired new databases such as Legal Forms, Consumer Reports, and Chilton Auto Guide. In our Adult Literacy Center, our Adult Literacy Coordinator worked with adult learners to build and develop reading and writing skills in English, with 2,858 hours spent in improving literacy in Camarillo. We also received a $29,000 grant from the California State Library to provide ESL tutoring, as well as English conversation groups. Our Russell Fisher Business Collection offered exciting programs to teens and adults about workplace development. Notable programs include Women at Work discussion panel for Women's History Month, digital headshots for the community, money basics for teens, and diversity at work panel. In total, for this past year, we hosted 539 programs with 16,820 people attending. So I'm grateful to city leadership, staff, and our amazing community for their dedication and support of the library, as well as our Friends group. The Camarillo Public Library Annual Report will be posted soon on our social media panels, but you can access it now on our website. I'll also be submitting the annual report to our California State Librarian. That concludes my annual report presentation, and I'm happy to address any questions.
Thank you. This is a receive and file item. Thank you for your update. Do any board members have any reports or comments or questions? Yes?
I just want to thank you and the staff for all the programs that we have in the library. All of us are so proud of our library and our staffing there, the employees that make it such a great library. And every time I read this, and I still see that there's several library cards that's still being issued after all these years, I think is a testimony to a lot of things. So I really appreciate all your efforts and all the programs, especially with such a great, diverse nature of the programs, I think is really special. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes? Councilmember Trump.
If it's okay, Madam President, I'd kind of like to talk about, I'd like to just make a general comment, not so much with the annual report, but just a thank you, like Mr. Kildee. Yesterday, I had the privilege of being at Leisure Village for a monthly outreach meeting that I do with residents there. And we had several speakers, including Ms. Nazar, including Megan Profita, I believe is how you pronounce her last name, who's the business services coordinator for the Russell Fisher Business Collection, and Mara Nuron, who's the literacy coordinator in adult literacy and ESL. And they spoke with the residents, and all three of you did a wonderful job. I want the library board to know that Mandy and her staff represent us very well in the community. And you know that things are successful because when you get a meeting and afterwards a lot of people are coming up to ask staff questions, you know that you succeeded. So kudos to you. We also had John Thomas and Monique Martinez speak as well on other topics, and they did a terrific job. So anyway, just a shout out to you and to library staff for being so good on your outreach. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Mayor Santangelo?
Thank you. I wanted to share our thanks and gratitude for all that you do, and a shout out to Clark and Division. I just finished it yesterday. Yes, I was really excited that I finally finished a book before the author day. So,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
so much.
And same here, I really wanted to extend my thanks and my gratitude for all that you and staff does for our community. And I mean, there's really a program for everyone in the community. I love that there's something for women, for children, for folks who are elderly, young and old. It's just so amazing. And really a special shout out also to Friends of the Library. I read your report. It's excellent, Mandy. And in it talks about the $145,000 contribution from Friends of the Library. So just truly amazing, hardworking people that are doing everything that they can to make Camarillo a better place. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And with no additional business, we will now adjourn this meeting of the Camarillo Library Board.
I'd like to reconvene the Camarillo Sanitary Board District meeting for August 23rd. Approval of the agenda as submitted, and we'll get down to general public comments. Are there any public comments for the sanitary district at this particular point? Seeing nobody come forward, we're going to get down to the consent. It's items B, C, and D. And my understanding, there may be some questions on item D. Is that correct?
Yes.
Would you like to have the item pulled, or would you like to just discuss it at this particular point?
I'd like to pull it.
Okay. So we'll pull that, and we'll get back, and we'll take it up at the end of the meeting. Okay. All right, so let's get down to the consent item, and that will be items B and C.
Move to approve.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, please vote. That passes unanimously. Let's just get down to board comments and staff comments. Are there any board comments or staff comments at this particular point?
No,
Okay.
I'm sorry, which
Yes.
item, Councilmember Tremblay, did you pull? Did you, D? Okay,
Ferrous chloride pricing agreement.
okay, thank you.
Any other comments or reports? So that gets us bound to item, go ahead.
I do have a short report, but I'll do it under regular council comments.
Okay.
Sorry, it has to do with the California Association of Sanitation Agencies conference that I attended with Councilmember Tennyson, but I'll do it under councilmember comments. if
Okay,
that's okay.
that sounds good.
Is
That's
that okay?
fine.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, so that's going to get us down to consent item D. Director Tremblay had a question, so I'll ask Director Tremblay, are you comfortable to ask your questions at this point?
Yeah, I actually have, I have a couple of questions, but I also have a little bit of heartburn on this one, so I wanted to pull it if that's all right. So
Sure.
this is a situation where we have a vendor who's come back to us, Cal Water, and as the rest of the board knows, based on the letter, the increase in these chemicals is going, we're being asked to approve a contract amendment whereby the increase is going from essentially $664 per anhydrous ton to $1,275 per anhydrous ton. And it's not, the overall amount is not a highly significant amount in the realm of hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it is a significant increase. Contractually, this vendor is entitled to a CPI increase of 5.1%. And in essence, they came back, if I understand it correctly, now I'm going to phrase it in the form of a question, Mr. President. So, Mr. Klotzel, if my understanding is correct, the vendor came back to the city and said, hey, prices have gone way up, supply chain's gone way up, our costs have gone way up, and we can't live with a 5.1% increase. We want to have an increase up to $1,275 is my understanding per ton. Is my understanding correct?
Correct.
One of the things that I have a problem with on this is that this vendor was citing to conditions during both 2022 and 2023 in terms of increases. But we previously approved a 7.4% CPI increase in cost and payment for them just last year. My way of thinking is they should have been aware of the conditions of the market, and to say to the city at this point, hey, we can't live with a 5.1% CPI increase, we've got to bump it up by what I previously cited, which is a incredibly high figure. I have some difficulty with that from a contractual standpoint. My understanding is, go back to questions if I can, Mr. President. My understanding is there are 4 other vendors in the Los Angeles area that also supply this chemical?
Yeah, right. We know of 4 other bidders. Basically, when we bid this back in 2021, we received bids from 3 vendors, Cal Water being one, and then another one has recently bid on Ventura, also just entered into a agreement for the same chemical, and another 4th vendor was included in that.
Right, and the market prices, if I'm understanding it correctly, like up in the Bay Area and elsewhere, are up in the $1,200, $1,300 per ton range. But what bothers me about this particular one is, from a contract standpoint, a deal's a deal. And now the vendor is coming back and saying, hey, we want to amend the agreement to bump this up dramatically. And I just think it bothers me as a matter of principle. And so we could decide to say, okay, we'll amend the agreement to allow for it. Just to let you know, I personally don't think that's the right way to go. I'm going to be a no vote on this amendment. I think we should go back and talk to this vendor and say, hey, well, you're contractually obligated to meet to do a 5.1% increase only, and if you don't want to do it, then let's talk about it. Or go back out to the market. and see what's available on the market. So that's my heartburn about this one. And I'm perfectly aware that, particularly with respect to vendors of chemicals for sanitary district plants in the last, I'd say especially the last 5 to 8 years, based on all the clients I represented, sanitary district clients, the cost of chemicals has just gone through the roof. And I get it, and I understand. I have heartburn about this from a contractual standpoint. So, anyway, I didn't even frame that in the form of a question, Mr. Klotzel. Do you have any comments on what I just said?
Yeah, and everything that you say is true, and those are some options that we could do. I will reference, I can't recall exactly what chemical it was, but not too long ago, like you mentioned, the cost going through the roof on not only this type of chemical, but across the board. We did take that tact and go back out to bid, and did not, and it was the same situation where the existing vendor offered a price, and the bids that we got back in were not any better. It all played out that the open market on bidding showed what the true costs, are that, all the vendors were proposing. The recent bids that Ventura opened, are higher than prior, and our volume also is very low compared to, say, Ventura or Oxnard, that we know has better pricing, but they use 5 to 6 to 10 times more than what we do. So our per unit price is higher.
Is higher because of that, but
Right.
there isn't any reason, is there, that we couldn't go back to the vendor and say, hey, wait a minute. You're contractually, you knew about what was going on in the market in 2022 and 2023. You knew what you signed up for. There was a CPI increase of 7.4% last year. You're asking, there's a 5.1 contractual increase this year, but now you're coming back to us with this price. Can't you do any better than that? And have a discussion with that vendor
Right.
to say,
So-
all right, if we approve an agreement, an amendment to the agreement, we ought to be able to compromise on this.
Yeah, no, absolutely, we could do that. Essentially, we've done that first part already with the contractual process of the next CPI increase is 5.1%. And their response to that was, we can't provide at that.
Except they're contractually
Dollar amount.
obligated to do so.
Correct.
And if they,
No,
if they,
absolutely.
if they don't
Yeah.
do it, they're technically in breach of contract.
No argument with that. And one possibility would be that that they're in breach and they walk and leave it up to us to take action at what, cost of.
If
time.
we were to do so, if we were to
Exactly,
take action.
exactly.
Right.
The other thing that I will mention, so the CPI, how that happens is it's, I believe it's February to February. So the prior year, February to February, CPI is then effective in June. So, you go year over year, February to February. So that 7.4% became effective June of 2022, reflective of the prior year, February to February increase. So that 7.4% increase covered, it went into effect in June. So, yeah, I understand what you're saying as far as, how much of the year could they foresee? What was known and then the rest of the year unknown.
Okay. Well-
Yeah, it's,
Thanks, David. Mr. President, I don't want to belabor it anymore. If there's a motion to approve the agreement, just for the record, I want you to know why I'm going to vote no on it. I don't think we should vote to approve the amendment, but that's up to everybody
So-
else as to which way you want to go.
Yeah, so I'm actually open to supporting Councilmember Tremblay's position and going back to the vendor. I know we understand that this is a chemical that is needed and it is important. But I do see your point in terms of what is in the contract, and I think it's important to be fair. And we have certain expectations when we form contracts, and we, expect those to be met. So I would support, moving forward with that.
Let me ask a question of Mr. Klotzel. Do we have the time to do this? In other words, do we have enough product to get us through while we go and, I don't want to say renegotiate, but have a conference and
Right.
a talk with this?
we do have chemical on hand to get us through for the time being. How long? Estimate is for the next few months. Exactly days, I don't have an exact time frame of that. Unknown how long it's going to take to either get an answer from the vendor of no thanks, or that they do agree to the 5.1%. And in that case, what we would need to do is come back to the board with a signed, as we have before us tonight, that that amendment is already signed by the vendor for the proposed $1,275 increase, but that's the point we would need to get to come back to the board. If they refuse to sign that, then we need to figure out what our next steps are. But in answer to your question, we have enough chemical to get by for now to at least, if the direction is to reach back out and talk to the vendor, we can do that, and then go from there.
And I do have just one more question as a follow-up. Do we know what vendors other cities in Ventura County are using? I mean, you mentioned Ventura.
Yes.
And the prices do they seem like they are comparable to, I know you mentioned a little bit about depending on how much we're actually utilizing.
Right, that's the hard thing to compare is, we use one truckload, Ventura uses 6 a year. Oxnard uses double that.
Sure.
So it just, when you look at how much you're buying, the price you get is typically higher if you're only going to buy 1 versus 6, right? So that's hard to compare. But the recent pricing from Ventura, essentially, if you equate it, and the way they bid and buy it is by the gallon. But if we convert that $1,275 proposed new high price to per gallon, it's about 35% higher. So it's basically a 35% premium for our low volume compared to what Ventura is purchasing the chemical for. So, it definitely, any increase is an increase.
Sure.
And the more you get into double digits, those are significant increases. But that's what the market shows, and we can take further steps if the board directs to to go back.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Santander, do you have a comment?
No, I was going to ask Mr. Tremblay if he had a motion.
I do.
Can I make one comment before you make your motion? Typically in the business world, as we all know, there are volume discounts. If in fact Mr. Tremblay makes this motion, I will support it. However, I'm not looking for a sizable savings if in fact we do this, but I don't think it hurts to go and certainly talk to the current vendor and see if there's any wiggle room on this. But that's my comment. Hopefully I'll be surprised with this, but I, for one, am not going to look at a sizable savings on this, but we'll see.
Would it be the appropriate time to offer a motion?
I think it would be.
With just the prefatory comment, too, we don't have Mr. Tennyson with us tonight, too, so it'd be helpful to have Dave here with us, too. My motion would be that we defer action on this item pending staff's further discussion with the vendor consistent with this evening's comments by the council.
I'll second.
It's a motion and a second. I have a clarification. Should we do a time specific? What I'm understanding, we've got about 2 months left with product that we've got?
No, exact time not certain. Probably more than 2 months. I'd hate to say much more than 2 to 3 months. It's just hard to put in a time on that. But we do have time to reach back out and talk to the vendor, and then we'll be
Okay, so I think we've got enough time. We're not completely under. Okay, all right. There's a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Please vote. That passes 4-1 with 1 absence. Okay, that is going to get us down. We already did that. So with that, we're going to recess again until the city council comes, and it'll be a discussion on the water and wastewater financial plan. So with that, we're in recess.
And I will open this meeting of the successor agency. Let the record reflect that all council members are present except for Mr. Tennyson. Any changes to this agenda?
No.
Okay. Do we have any public comments for the successor agency? Seeing none, I'll move on to the consent calendar.
I'll move the approval of consent.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Without further discussion, please vote. That passes 4-1 with 1 absence. And are there any board or staff comments? Okay, hearing
No.
none, then I will adjourn this meeting of the successor agency. And I will reconvene the meeting of the Camarillo City Council. Let the record reflect that all council members are present except for Mr. Tennyson. And it looks like we have a presentation tonight. And this is on Coastal Cleanup Day.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and staff. I am Jessica Ouellette, the City of Camarillo Stormwater Program Manager, and I think this is actually the last slide. Let me go ahead and
Start at the beginning.
start at the beginning. I'm Jessica Ouellette, the City of Camarillo Stormwater Program Manager, and I'm going to provide you information about this year's 38th Annual Coastal Cleanup Day event in Camarillo, which will be held on September 23rd, 2023, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. California Coastal Cleanup Day is known as one of the largest volunteer events held on one single day in the world. In fact, in 1993, California Coastal Cleanup Day was recognized by the Guinness Book of World Records as the largest garbage collection event ever organized, with 50,405 volunteers. Since then, the reach of California Coastal Cleanup Day has steadily spread inland to cities like Camarillo. Most of the marine debris that we find on our beaches actually starts as inland trash or street litter. So this continued effort to stop trash where it starts is an important effort in keeping our beaches and oceans clean. Last year at Camarillo's 2 locations, we had 115 volunteers remove over 480 pounds of trash and recyclables, with food wrappers and plastic waste being the largest quantity of trash collected. We are very grateful for those volunteers who continue to help keep Camarillo beautiful. Since 2018, Camarillo has averaged around 100 volunteers at the Mission Oaks Barranca site and around 60 volunteers at the Cayugas Creek site. Since 2018, these volunteers have removed almost 2,300 pounds of trash and recyclables. In 2020, Coastal Cleanup Day was more of an individual clean up your own neighborhood event, and the city did not host any specific sites, which is why there are no records indicated on the slide. However, we are very grateful to the 15 volunteers who removed 283 pounds of trash and recyclables and continued to keep Camarillo beautiful. Last year in Ventura County, 1,510 volunteers removed 8,358 pounds of trash and recyclables from 16 inland and coastal sites. The Ocean Conservancy has not released the 2022 results of the International Coastal Cleanup Day event, so these are the results from the 2021 event. Statewide, in 2021, almost 35,000 volunteers removed over 380,000 pounds of trash and recyclables. As can be seen on this table, the top item collected in California was again the cigarette butt, with over 125,000 collected statewide at last year's event. In the United States, over 130,000 volunteers worked together to collect and remove over 2 million pounds of trash and recyclables. Internationally, over 318,000 volunteers removed over 5.5 million pounds of trash and recyclables. Camarillo will again be hosting 2 locations for this year's event, and I want to take the time to thank the council and city staff for making this possible. One cleanup site is in the Mission Oaks Barranca, which is located below Mission Oaks Park at Mission Oaks Boulevard and Oak Canyon Road. Volunteers should meet in the grass area next to the tennis courts. The second location is in Cayugas Creek. Volunteers should meet above the creek at the intersection of Creekside Road and Paseo del Campo. Since we are trying to make this a zero-waste event, we encourage volunteers to bring their own bags, reusable water bottles, and gloves, but we will also supply those items in case they are forgotten. We will also be supplying a data collection card to record statistics on what they are removing from the waterway. This information is put into the Ocean Conservancy's international database. As it may be a warm day, we also encourage volunteers to apply protective sunscreen and wear appropriate attire, so please no flip-flops. The terrain in Cayugas Creek is also not suitable for strollers or small children, so we encourage volunteers with small children to come to the Mission Oaks Barranca site. Also, as a token of our appreciation for their service, we will have a limited number of tote bags and stickers to give to volunteers who come out to help clean up our waterways. As you are aware, part of the annual event is to collect data on the trash volunteers are removing, which is compiled into a worldwide database by the Ocean Conservancy. Although we will provide data cards at the event locations, we encourage volunteers to download and use the Clean Swell data collection app in order to record their finds and be counted towards the volunteer and trash totals for Camarillo. Volunteers can check out their cleanup history, so anytime, anywhere, they can see the impact they have had on making our creeks and oceans a cleaner and healthier ecosystem. More information on this app can be found on the Ocean Conservancy's website. Again, this year's event will be held on Saturday, September 23rd, 2023, from 9 a.m. to 12 noon. I want to thank the City Council and City staff for again supporting this important event in Camarillo and in helping to keep the environment clean. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Appreciate you being here. I know I try to get out there every year.
You do.
I'll try again this year. Do we have any questions?
I do have one question. And by the way, Mayor Santangelo, I have seen all your photos, so I know you've been out. Do you reach out to, well, I saw pictures with youth, but are you intentionally reaching out to certain schools, youth groups, just to try to get our youth involved in the process?
We haven't directly reached out to the schools, which we can definitely accommodate within the coming weeks. But what we do for as far as outreach, we put it together. We put out articles within the City Scene newsletter, so that goes out to the residents that are subscribed. And then we also include them within the city's utility bill inserts for August, so that every resident within Camarillo that's receiving a utility bill insert should be able to see it. So that's the outreach that we have been doing, and then also posting on social media as well. But we can definitely accommodate trying to reach out to the schools and other youth groups.
Yeah, I mean, I think, one of the ways that you can get some big fans is with little people that can be very excited about the project, and I definitely know that is something that motivates parents when they're hearing it from their children. So that is something that I would definitely recommend.
Great.
Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the event.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we'll go ahead and do that.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else? Mr. Kildee?
Thank you for being here. It's one of my favorite events. If folks that are here and those that are listening on TV, if you have time, it's really cool to partake in this. I am always amazed at what I find out there. You never know what you're going to run into, but it's a very successful program that we've been doing for actually decades now. So thanks for being. I always look forward to it, and I know there's some giveaways and whatnot that they've gotten, sometimes some really neat things, but the real benefit to this is that we're really taking care of trash and our planet, which is really important. And, it gets kind of complicated, but we can do things in the matrix here, and a little bit of action goes a long way. So I'm certainly going to try to be there. I'll rest up the night before, a lot of bending over and all that, but it makes you feel good to pick up trash. So those are my comments.
Wonderful.
you.
Well, we look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us down to council and staff comments and reports, and I'll start with Dr. Martinez Bravo.
Thank you, Mayor. For meetings attended and events, July 13th, I attended the Airport Authority meeting. July 20th, I attended the elected officials mixer, and I wanted to thank the West Ventura County Business Alliance for hosting that event. It was a lot of fun to get to meet and speak with other elected officials in our community. August 12th, I attended the grand opening of Channel Vista and Sol Vista, a new home communities at CSCCI. Beautiful homes, great layout, and they are in the process of selling those homes, so it's really cool. August 14th, I also attended the CSUCI Site Authority meeting. It was our first, or my first one, coming back in person, and President Dr. Yao was able to provide us with an update. So there are some really good things happening at CSUCI for those who may not know. There's a conservation center that they're working in partnership with the Santa Barbara Zoo, which is really exciting. And there's also an upward trajectory on enrollment, because I know there has been some issues and difficulties with enrollment, but it's an upward trajectory, so that is good. They are also working on a Black and Latino Affinity Center, as has been the request of many of their students that they serve. And they also just recently got a grant. Dr. Cynthia Flores led that effort, and this was a grant through NASA, which was pretty exciting. And it was very specific. It was based on math and physics to predict how quickly various metal structures corrode artificial realities, which was just interesting, just that sentence in and of itself. August 15th at 7 a.m., I attended the morning Rotary, and I wanted to thank Councilmember Tennyson for inviting me to attend as his guest. Our city manager, Greg Ramirez, was there as well, bright and early. And I really had the opportunity to meet many other leaders and community members who are just doing such wonderful work in our community. It was very rewarding, because I used to sit on this board, and they provided a $60,000 check to Kidstream, which was really exciting to move that forward. And let's see, on August 15th, I attended the Crossing Guards Breakfast, and I just wanted to thank our crossing guards for everything that they do to keep our children safe. Thank you to law enforcement for providing the training, for being there as well. Today was back to school for many schools, including PVSD. And as a mom with young children, I know how important it is to, have a relationship with our crossing guards and to give our trust. And I think it's just as important for us parents to continue to be safe, to be extra cautious and extra vigilant, especially when we're dropping our kids off and picking up. I know sometimes we're in a rush, but just remember, safety is first. And on August 15th, I also met with the Southwest Carpenters here in Camarillo. They are a group of very hardworking men and women, and they have many programs and partnerships. For example, they have the Brothers Keeper program to assist disadvantaged groups looking to improve their lives. And through the work of carpentry, they also have the Boots program. It's bridging outstanding opportunities with tradeswomen's skills. So it's a program specifically designed for women who are interested in carpentry. And they also have another program, Helmets to Hard Hats. This involves active duty and retired service members, National and National Reserve, who are looking to do some jobs in construction. So they have different programs, and it was a great meeting to learn more about who they are. On August 18th, I also had the pleasure of touring Oxnard College with President Dr. Cobian and Dr. Maria Estrada and the administrative team at Oxnard College. I really learned more about their work, their proposed projects, and trying to expand access to Camarillo families. And I really look forward to many more future collaborative efforts to serve those needs for our Camarillo students. And I also wanted to just take this time of gratitude and thanks. Thank you to all of our community members who sent their emails to us. I was out of the country for some time, and so there probably was a delay in my response or in receiving those emails. I understand there was also a bit of an IT glitch, but we were able to fix that. But I just wanted to assure everyone that I have personally read all of your emails, so thank you for voicing your opinions. I also wanted to utilize this time to thank Congresswoman Julia Brownlee and her staff for connecting with FEMA immediately after I reached out to them to let them know that some Camarillo family members had been separated, and there was also another family from Moore Park in Ventura County. This due to the awful situation in Maui, and they were having a hard time getting back. And so Julia Brownlee and her staff immediately reached out to FEMA, and they were able to provide some of that help and support. So thank you. And I really do send my love and my prayers to all the families who experienced such devastating loss out in Maui. And finally, I also wanted to thank our city manager, Greg Ramirez, and Carmen and staff for updating us on really the before, during, and after of the hurricane/hurricane that it turned into. I think it was very useful to continue getting that information and being up to date as to what was happening with the wastewater, and that knowing that the wastewater plant, knowing that it was being monitored, and just everything, all the responsibility that goes along with that. So thank you so much. I really appreciated your efforts.
Mr. Kildee?
Okay, so meetings attended. I was at the President Circle of CSUCI on August 1st. Along with my other council members, I was at the Crossing Guards breakfast on August 15th. I'd also like to share my thoughts that, oftentimes it's a thankless job. It's a very necessary job, and they do a great job for us here, especially the first days in the first week, because it gets really impacted there. So they do a great job. Also, Ms. Martinez Bravo brought up the hurricane, how to come up with that word. Isn't that amazing here that we were even talking about that? But apparently, from what I understand, we fared fairly well in the city on this. So that's really good, too. August 17th, I attended a PV, Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District Liaison Committee. I don't have a report, but it looks like after a relatively long pause, there may be some movement on that. More to come. Today, actually August 22nd, there was an investment committee meeting that I attended as well with Mr. Tennyson, and today I attended a VRSD special meeting. It's not on the agenda, and I just want to make a comment from personally here. I'd like to, and we've got some time to do this. We had an air show over the weekend. Unfortunately, it was canceled on Sunday due to weather, but I think we need to have a discussion on this, and I think there's some improvements that can be made on that. So that's all I have to say on that. And let's see, I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Tremblay.
Thanks, Madam Mayor, for meetings, et cetera. Attended July 27, the Policy Committee with the Mayor. July 28, Metrolink Board of Directors. August 1, the President's Circle meeting at CSUCI covered a lot of the topics that Councilmember Martinez Bravo talked about. On August 3rd, together with the Mayor, we had a desalter tour with Congresswoman Brownlee. I thought staff did an exceptionally good job with that tour, so thank you. Also attended the United Water Conservation District water recharge event. This was the event on commemorating their 4 million acre feet of recharge into our groundwater basins, which is great news. August 9th through 11th, the conference for the California Association of Sanitation Agencies, 68th Annual Conference, and I'll talk about that in just a minute. August 15th, the Crossing Guard Breakfast. August 17th, the Liaison Committee with Pleasant Valley Recreation and Park District with Councilmember Kildee. That night on August 17th, I went to the 50th anniversary celebration for Leisure Village. Their Players Guild put on a 50 Years in Paradise celebration, which was just superb. They did a great job. On August, hard to believe. I mean, we're just sit back and think back where we all were 50 years ago. I was starting my senior year in high school, but I don't want anybody to do the mental math. Okay, August 19th, worked as a volunteer in the Rotary booth for Wings Over Camarillo event on Saturday, and then with the Mayor today, a policy committee meeting on August 23. Two things. One, for the California Association of Sanitation Agencies conference. I know I've taken a lot of time on sanitary district matters this evening, but Councilmember Tennyson was there. Mr. Ramirez was there, Mr. Klotzer were there, but the topics included ones that were really timely for our purposes, including optimizing financing options, for example, for a large project, and since we are looking at the largest public works project in the city's history, in a few years from now in terms of our water reclamation plant. It was a very timely discussion. There was also discussion on advanced wastewater treatment and how that works, and that has a real impact on what our permit requirements look like and on what we can put into our plant. Biosolids management, I know it's not the most exciting feature, but I did share with all of the council members, gave you some ideas on this. This is a handout from the conference, and also on recruiting new workers into the water sector, which is turning out to be difficult. It's a real challenge to bring young people in, but fortunately there are a lot of young people who are environmentally minded and environmentally science-minded who are interested in the wastewater and water sector. And then finally, and I'm pinch hitting for Mr. Tennyson on this, but I wanted to give a shout out to our Southern California Edison representative, Andrew Thomas. Apparently we had a resident recently who had installed a solar system at his home, but there was a delay in getting, I guess, permission from Edison to actually activate the solar, and they kept going out delay after delay, and they had reached out to a number of people, but once he got in touch with Mr. Tennyson, and Mr. Tennyson got in touch with Andrew Thomas, who we've seen here before as our Edison representative, and almost immediately there was permission given to activate the solar. So a shout out to our Edison representative, Mr. Thomas, for a job well done. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, and for myself, on July 27th, I attended the Policy Committee. On August 1st, I was also at the President's Circle at CSUCI. On August 3rd, I was also at the tour of the DeSalter with Congresswoman Julia Brownley. Really appreciated her taking the time out to be there with us. And then later that day, I was at the United Water Conservation Celebration as well. August 16th, Clean Power Alliance Executive Committee. August 15th, the Crossing Guard Breakfast, and then later that day, we had a meeting with Supervisor Long and her staff, just keeping up the collaboration between the city and the county. And this morning, I had Policy Committee with Vice Mayor Tremblay. That's all I have. Okay. So that should bring us down to the consent calendar, items E through O.
I'd like to move. Move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll do a second, if that's okay.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously with one absence. Okay, that brings us down to item P, which is our first discussion item. We have a staff report.
Thank you, Mayor Santangelo and City Council members. So every year, the County of Ventura goes and compiles a list of all the properties that haven't paid their taxes in several years and goes for what's called a tax default sale, which is basically a public auction to recapture those taxes owed to the taxing agencies. And in that process, the county reaches out to government jurisdictions and asks if they need the property for public use. And one of the uses in the definition of public use is affordable housing. So if a jurisdiction can identify a public use, that property is pulled from the auction block, if you would, and is not sold under public bid. And then the county enters in an agreement with the taxing entity or the jurisdiction directly for that specific use. So typically, what happens is the list goes out to the city, we receive it, we look through all the properties on the list, and we identify the ones that are in Camarillo, and we start working with the county and seeing if they've been redeemed. Most every year, the properties are redeemed. However, this year, in the beginning of 2023, we kind of started the same process. We identified several properties, and all of them were redeemed except for one. So we requested the property be pulled from the public auction, and the county forwarded a purchase and sale agreement to us, which is on the agenda for tonight for consideration for purchase. The property is located at 2361 Berry Street, which is east of Arneal Road, north of Berry, kind of by the north of the Jiffy Lube, there on the corner, and behind the CBC Credit Union and Dunkin' Donuts. You can kind of see it's right here highlighted. So the site is, in a general plan, is medium density or 18 units to the acre. The zoning is residential plan development, which gives some flexibility on development standards in that zone. The size is 3,750 square feet. It measures 25 feet wide and it's 150 feet long. So it's kind of a shotgun, narrow lot. The price, if we want to move forward with the purchase, is $46,100. And we do not have a project plan for this. We haven't received direction from the council yet. What we're really trying to do here is create an opportunity for a future affordable housing project. So if the council would like to proceed forward, the process would be kind of laid out here on the screen. So it'd be approval of the agreement tonight. And then that agreement would be forwarded to the Ventura County Board of Supervisors for their approval, which we're told could happen in October. And then the agreement would need to be sent up to the state for their approval, which I understand that process takes about 30 days. And then once the county receives it back from the state, there's a 60-day final redemption period where the property owner has one last chance to redeem the property. And if the property is not redeemed, the city could take possession of the property at that time. So kind of doing the math, it sounds like if we move forward with this purchase and sale agreement and went through the process, we could take possession of the property sometime early next year, guessing kind of like February. So staff's recommendation is find that the purchase of the tax default property is exempt from CEQA, approve the agreement for the purchase and sale and authorize submittal of the agreement to Ventura County Board of Supervisors, authorize the city manager to execute all necessary documents, complete the purchase, and authorize a transfer out of $3,100 out of the low moderate income housing fund and make an appropriation of $51,100 in the Camarillo corridor project area fund 429 tax exempt bonds. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Have any questions? Mr. Kildee?
Yeah, thanks for the report, David. So would you agree it's kind of a strange parcel, if you will? It's not, it's let's say not strange, but unusual. So with that, are you convinced that there's something that can be done with this? In other words, if we do get fortunate enough to purchase this, that it'll be a useful parcel?
Yes, we feel confident that we could design a project for that site.
Okay, that's all I have.
Any other questions?
No questions other than,
Comments?
yeah, other than my comment would be, I know we have a housing crisis here in Ventura County, and I thank staff for doing your job in following up and, providing us this information. And I would like to move forward to support it. Yes.
Madam Mayor, if that's a motion as to all four staff recommendations, I'd be happy to second it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously with one absence. Okay. So we're at the point in our agenda where we have an item that's probably going to take a few minutes, and we have public comments at 6 p.m., and I don't want to delay that. So we're going to take a 7-minute break. 7 minutes. We'll be back at 6 p.m. for public comments. Okay. And it is now time for public comments. This is time for comments on items not on the agenda. So I will call up your name as I've received the cards. Michael Zabarski. And you have 3 minutes. The buzzer will go off at 2 minutes, but you can keep talking until the 3-minute.
Excellent, thank you. First of all, before I start and introduce myself, I wanted to thank not only the city, but the council for the last 20 years' support of some of the things I'm most passionate about, those with intellectual and developmental disabilities, supporting organizations like Special Olympics, the 805 Miracle League, NAMI, where they do the annual walk, the crisis intervention team through the sheriff's office. So I wanted to say thank you for that to begin with. My name, as you mentioned, is Mike Zabarski. I am here right now as a private citizen, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that I'm also a Ventura County Sheriff's Senior Deputy. I've done 13 of my 20 years of service in the city of Camarillo, so it's a pleasure to be here in front of you. I wanted to reiterate an invitation you received from Commander Tennyson and inviting you personally to our annual Tip-A-Cop that we will be holding for the first time in 8 years here in the city of Camarillo at Finney's Restaurant located at 580 Ventura Boulevard in the Camarillo Outlets. Also like to invite the public. That event will be on August 30th from 5 to 9 p.m. And I wanted to let you know that Special Olympics, especially in Ventura County, we have 700 athletes who participate all year round. It costs about $500 per athlete to be able to compete all year long at absolutely zero cost to them or their families. It's all done through direct donation. It pays for uniforms, equipment, travel expenses. If they're outside area tournaments, it'll be their hotel rooms, sports venues, and again, all at no cost. Through the Sheriff's Office, I represented Special Olympics in other countries like Canada and New Zealand, where the government only pays about 30%. So if the funds are not there, they don't compete or they have to raise themselves. I also want to point out that Special Olympics is a 4-star Charity Navigator, which means that it got a 94% rating, very high rating for a charity. The torch run began 40 years ago in Wichita, Kansas. Worldwide in the last 40 years, law enforcement being the #1 fundraiser has raised more than $1 billion worldwide. Over 100,000 officers were known as Guardians of the Flame of Hope. And I want to point out that not only Camarillo Police Department, but the Sheriff's Office, it is part of our vision statement, and I'm going to read this direct. The Ventura County Sheriff's Office is committed to increasing and strengthening community partnerships, which this is. Pillar #1, leading from the front. Our law enforcement executive staff, as well as command staff for Camarillo PD, is a complete supporter. We believe in community partnerships, so I want to thank Finney's Restaurant, the city of Camarillo, and also our last is engaging our stakeholders, which is those with intellectual developmental disabilities, community members, city councils, and law enforcement.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, yes, just stay there.
Yes, ma'am.
Please don't go away. Okay. If someone can't be there, if they're out of town or they can't be there for the Tip-A-Cop event, but they want to make a donation, what would you suggest? To go directly to the website or?
That is correct. You can go directly to the Ventura County Special Olympics website, make a direct donation. If you don't want to wait for a table, we will have additional things outside, for example, a UAV to be able to look at, police vehicles, a K-9 officer. You can do the to-go window, and you can leave a donation there. And I do want to point out in terms of law enforcement, we are volunteering our time. We are not getting paid for this event. I have volunteers from the executive staff, from command staff such as Commander Tennyson and Captain Hendren. I have supervisors, sergeants, and seniors. I have some of our newest deputies who just graduated the academy. They understand the culture of law enforcement and how important this is. I also have our professional staff, dispatchers. We have people from our crime lab. We have cadets. We even will have explorers there. So we're talking youth. I know Councilmember Martinez mentioned that earlier. We have our youth that are also involved. This is a global 360 movement, and we are completely behind it. which is why I wanted to invite you to spend some time with us and let us serve you in this way.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your service.
Thank you, sir.
And just one last comment, Mr. Savarski. It is on my calendar. I do work that night. I have a board meeting, but I hope to make it at least toward the end of the night. But more than anything, I just wanted to thank you for everything that you do. I follow you on social media. I know you're super busy and just doing so much good. And the city of Camarillo and I am so grateful that you are here, serving our community, serving people with disabilities as well. So thank you so much for your big heart.
Thank you, council member.
Thank you. Bob Garcia.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. I want to make a couple of suggestions to the board, and I hope you all got to read my email that I sent. I wasn't sure if it went through or not. I want to suggest that we change the name of Constitution Park to Veterans Park for the following reasons. I don't have anything against the Constitution. It's the greatest document that I know of. We live under it every day, but I think because the focal point of this park is the flag, the emblems of the military services, and the 4 plaques with the names of fallen military personnel from the Camarillo area, I think it's more appropriate that the park be named Veterans Park so it can encompass all the veterans. If you read my email, you saw that I did the research on those names, and I was kind of shocked to find out that we have a missing in action Camarillo resident that's been missing in action since 1952. And I think he deserves some special recognition as well. Not that he's more important than somebody who lost their life, but it's kind of a special circumstance where the family, who I know some of the family members through my research, they never knew what happened to him. And not just him, there was 3 other crewmen aboard that plane. Anyway, so my suggestions are change the name to Veterans Park to honor all the veterans that have served in the military. And I have 30 years of active and reserve time combined, and I know how difficult being in the military can be. It's not an easy life. So I think it's appropriate to name the park Veterans Park. I'm also suggesting, I got the idea walking through the park. I saw those bricks that people pay for and personalize, and I was thinking that any veteran from in the area could buy one and put them around the display out there, and it's be like raise money to maintain that display and for whatever's needed to keep the park looking good. And I would be the first one to buy one, and I'm going to buy 2. I'm going to buy one if you do this. I don't know if any of you know R.T. Lee. He was a Tuskegee Airman who just passed away in December. He was a good friend of mine, and his probably should be the first brick to go out there. And then my last suggestion is the stage. I would love to see Victor Corona's name up there so that every time you have one of your concerts or some kind of event there, people can see that name and maybe a plaque on the side, describing his loss. And then, that his family has no gravesite to go to. I just think it would be a good reminder to the city about the sacrifices. I have this. There's a lot of background information. I'd like to just give it. You guys can look at it at your leisure, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for your comments.
And just one comment, Mr. Garcia, I did read your email late last night, and I was really touched by it, and I will reply to you, and I would love to continue to have this conversation.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Gabriel Magyar?
Honorable council members, my name is Gabriel Magyar. The Camarillo Spring Golf Course was flooded 4 times this year. None of our homes were flooded because the water was able to flow on the golf course. Please do not allow the building of homes on the golf course. Thank you.
Linda Anglin?
Hi, thank you for letting me address you tonight, and thanks for all that you do for our amazing city. I love it here. I've been here over 30 years. I live in Mission Oaks. And I was reading recently in the Acorn about your decision to move forward on the underground walkway for the train station, and I have some concerns about that. I did go on the website, looked at the link. I think it was your June 14th meeting that talked about all the reasons why you felt it would be a good idea to move forward on it. I have concerns about the cost. I have concerns about the safety and the cost of that safety. As a woman, I wouldn't ever use it, pretty sure. And I'm concerned about the need. How many of our citizens really in Camarillo are we serving? I don't know. I heard some numbers in that presentation, but I just have some concerns about it. I talk a lot about it with people in the community, my friends, and quite frankly, I haven't found anybody at my level of the community service that understands or gets the need for it. So that's it, and I just appreciate your listening. I know you can't answer any questions that I might have tonight, but thank you for hearing my concerns. I'm not sure when your next meeting that you'll be addressing that issue here, but I'll be here to, and I'm sure we'll have others here to understand a little more about your concern and your feel for the need of it. Because I haven't found anybody in my circle that sees the need for it. I know that we have CAT that's very active here in Camarillo to get people to places that they need to be. I've used it with our family. I have family here in town. So I think Camarillo serves its community well. I don't see the need for a $15 million underground tunnel to get to the train station. I don't see it, but I'm sure open to hearing more about it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Mhm.
Thanks very much, Ms. Anglin, for speaking tonight. Could I just ask staff briefly, Dave, Mr. Klotzel, there is engineering or preliminary engineering design moving forward on that project. When would you estimate, just so we can answer, when would you estimate that something might come back to us? It's going to be a little while,
It
I
will
think,
be.
right?
Yeah, I really can't put even a range to that.
Many months
Yes.
before it comes back?
It'll be next year sometime. Yeah, we've got a lot of coordination to do with the railroad and to move forward. And as the prior item, staff did take the direction from council to come back to council when we do have a more of a preliminary layout and more information on the project. So we will be back, just it'll be some time.
It's going to be a while. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, and finally, Mike Mishler.
Good evening, Mike Mishler. Many of you already know me. I'm from here in Camarillo, but moved up here in 1983. I'm here mainly because of the few people, Dave's not here tonight, I guess, but for the people who don't know me. My background is I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in geology. I spent my entire career doing geology. I'll be getting into that more later in future talks. But tonight, I just want to mention also that I've never been against development. Later on, I'll be talking about some development stuff here going on in the city. But I have a history, I've been up here many times. If a project, it makes sense and it's not stupid, not doing stupid stuff and helping the whole community, I've always supported. So for example, when Pardee was building up in Mission Oaks, I supported them. I had nothing against that. But when Pardee wanted to move down into Caligas Creek and put in a cement channel and build some homes down there in the floodplain, I was down here against that, and it's still open now. Another example would be Village at the Park. The first proposal that came through the city was voted down, which was good, and then I myself and a few other people met with the developer, and we talked the developer into expanding the park out there, the sports park, and they went up to 55 acres. And that's, okay, my sound went out, you okay?
Still good.
Okay. So I worked with the developer, myself and a few other people worked with the developer. We got up to 55 acres. We came back and supported it. It was a large main good benefit for the whole community. And so we supported it and it went through and it's nice. Up in Mission Oaks Park, the original park was 10 acres is what the city allocated from Pardee there, the original Mission Oaks Park. I had met with the vice president of Pardee Construction Company, and I knew of a property that wasn't going to be used by the park district, and we made a deal. And we were able to increase and add 10 acres to the original 10 acres. So the current Mission Oaks Park is now 20 acres and was rebuilt because of what I did with the vice president there. So I'm not against development as long as it's helping the whole community. And I just want to make those notes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mishler. Are there any other public comments? Anyone else would like to address the council? Okay. All right, that brings us down to item Q, which is our water and wastewater financial plan.
I'm going to reconvene the Camarillo Sanitary District order as well.
Okay. And Mr. Uribe, are you handling this one?
I'll start it off.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council, members of the Sanitary Board. This item is to authorize the initiation of a Proposition 218 process, setting forth a date of October 11th for a public hearing to consider water and sewer rate increases. And if authorized tonight, the notifications will be sent to all the affected ratepayers. I want to make clear that there will be no formal action taken on rates tonight, that the October 11th public hearing will be the time and place for the City Council and the Camarillo Sanitary Board to consider the rates. And the public will have multiple opportunities to provide comments between now and then, including a public forum that is scheduled for September 18th at the library. Now, if you recall back on the July 12th council meeting, we presented an overview of the rate study process in some detail. And as a refresher, I'm going to turn it over to Kevin Kostowick from Raftelis Financial Consultants, our rate study consultants, to touch on some of those key components.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Kevin Kostowick from Raftelis. Our presentation tonight is a condensed version from July 12th, where we had a lengthy discussion on water and the water enterprise, as well as CSD, and we also talked about drought rates. So as some background, we met 8 times since October of 2022 with the Utilities Committee. We reviewed the process of the rate studies. We reviewed underlying cost assumptions on both the operating front, the capital front for both utilities. We looked at in detail at demand patterns, both recent usage patterns and projections into the future. We reviewed preliminary results and were directed by the Utilities Committee to look at some additional alternatives, more than half a dozen I think we ended up looking at over the course of the spring. The recommendation is to repay or retire the existing 2019 water bonds as part of this year's rate study. We discussed that as well as these alternatives at the July 12th City Council and CSD board meeting. You gave us direction at that meeting. We went back and drafted our rate study reports, which I know are in the agenda tonight. And as Mark mentioned, what this meeting is to authorize the noticing of customers. So it starts the process, the 218 process, at which point customers are noticed. We have a minimum of 45 days to protest the rates. Customers can protest, and then a public hearing after that 45-day period. So what's driving the rates on the water side? If we look at the long-range financial plan, we've had reduced water sales over the last several years. So we had multiple years of drought, followed by a record or near record winter last year that depressed water demands. At the same time, we have unexpected increases in our water supply costs, shifting sources of supply, so we incurred additional costs in purchasing imported water, which is the most expensive source of supply. We have inflationary pressure on operating expenses. We have a robust capital improvement program, in addition to existing projects. There's been an addition of some additional projects in that long-range plan when we look out over the course of 5 to 10 years. And when we look at the combination of future operating and future capital, there will be a need to borrow in the future using debt to finance some of these projects. And so we need to ensure that we have capacity to service that debt when we issue bonds. So the scenario that the council landed on at the July 12th meeting, you see here, Mindful that we're only talking about a 2-year adoption, though we plan 10 years out so we can see anything that's down the road. We're looking at only a 2-year rate adoption, 9% increases relative to existing rates. The first increase would be effective January of 2024, and the second 6 months later, July of 2024. And then the estimation is that we would have 9% increases required beyond that, but those are only for planning purposes. When we compare a typical customer bill to neighboring agencies, so this is a single-family residential customer that has a 5/8 or 3/4 inch connection, 12 units, that's HCF 100 cubic feet, 12 units of water per month. You see the current bill, $52.03, the most affordable of the surveyed agencies. 2 years out, so this includes both the first 9% and the second 9% compounded. We leapfrog the city of Fillmore, that bill would be $61.82. Now, just as a reminder or refresher, what we've done here is look 2 years out at other agencies at either their adopted rates, part of a multi-year plan, or assumed a 4% increase. And there are agencies that are at the beginning of a multi-year plan, at the end, or initiating a new study. For CSD, we have similar drivers. So we have the water reclamation plant replacement projects. That is the elephant in the room. That's at the end of the decade, but we have to build up to that to be able to borrow for that very significant project. The estimation is on the order of $145 million in new debt over the course of the next 10 years to finance that project. There is $30 million assumed in grants that offset the total project costs. We do have inflationary pressures on our operating costs, just like on the water side of the house, and what that requires to be able to fund that capital program years out is a 12% rate increase in the first 2 years, followed by, for planning purposes, 12% increases for the next 5 years thereafter. And just like water, the first increase would be proposed for January of 2024, the second increase 6 months later in July of 2024. And a similar neighboring agency comparison, the same typical single-family user at 1,200 cubic feet per month. The current charge is a fixed or a flat charge of $59.23. Those two compounding 12% increases would move the bill up to $74.30. So we're jumping two neighboring agencies there. But again, mindful that folks like Oxnard have just initiated a new multi-year study. Ventura is in the middle of a 5-year program, but looking at perhaps some significant increases beyond that 5-year term, and others at different points in their rate study adoption process. Then we look at the combined bill. So we showed water separately, CSD separately, but the majority of your customers are combined service. So when we add water plus sanitation service, the total monthly bill is $111.26. Currently, that would, in 2 years' time, or I should say 2 fiscal year time, move up to $136.11. So still at the bottom third, in a good sense, of the neighboring agencies. And then, as I mentioned, we discussed drought rates at the last council meeting. So what these are, as a reminder, are supplemental rates or surcharges to our normal condition rates. They're temporary in nature, only implemented when required, when we're in a declared shortage or some mandatory conservation. They are rates in the context of Proposition 218, and so we do need to include them in the notice to customers. These are discretionary rates, so they can be implemented or rescinded by City Council at any time. And it is just one of many tools to use in a time of shortage. The council can always maintain the discretion to use another tool to implement a drought rate that's less than the maximum that's noticed, utilize reserves, defer capital, et cetera. So just one additional tool in the toolbox in times of shortage. And this table just shows what those surcharges would be. So this is what a customer would see in their 218, the notice that they would receive on the rate increases. We have our primary customer classes, single family, residential, multifamily, and then our common non-residential classes. The baseline rates are showing what would be our January 1, 2024 rates, and then the drought rates or the drought surcharge is shown as a surcharge at our different levels of shortage, levels 1 through 4. And so for single family, where the majority of the use is in Tier 1 or Tier 2, you see it's something like a level 2 surcharge. 30 cents would be additional for every unit of water that's used in Tier 1, and 44 cents additional for every unit used in Tier 2. As far as the remaining schedule, again, tonight is simply to authorize the noticing of customers based on the proposal. As was mentioned, September 18th is held for a public forum to engage the community and have a Q&A on the city utilities, on rates generally. Public hearing would be scheduled for October 11th for City Council, and then for CSD, which requires a second reading, that would be October 25th. And finally, adoption, if it happens, would be January 1st of 2024 for the first increase, second increase, July 1. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have questions? Mr. Tremblay?
Kevin, can you just clarify, though, that I'll have comments later, but just clarify, with respect to city customers and Camarillo customers, these increased rates would impact those folks who are within the city, but everyone basically west of Cayugas Creek, because everyone east of Cayugas Creek is served by the Camarillo Water District. So we're not talking about, this would not impact those Camarillo Water District customers either from a water or a sewer rate standpoint, correct?
I don't believe so, but I would.
Okay, then let me point that to Mr. Colosso, because I think that's correct, and I want to make sure.
Yes, I mean, the correct statement is, this will only affect Camarillo water and sewer customers. We do serve sewer to the east of Cayugas Creek, down in the south part of town, in the industrial area, and also
That's true.
Camarillo Springs.
Sorry, I stand
So-
corrected. Okay, no, that's right. But all the entire Mission Oaks area.
Yes,
And,
correct.
right, is served through Camarillo Water
The
District.
vast majority of east of Cayugas Creek is Camarillo.
So roughly here for rates, we're talking about, what is it, around 70%, 71, 72% of city residents would be impacted by these increased rates if they were to go through? Okay, thanks.
Mr. Kildee?
Yeah, just for the record, Kevin, with potentially what we may or may not do tonight, we will be in compliance with Prop 218, and we are following the law as it is stated. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's all I have.
Comments?
I don't have any comments.
Mr. Tremblay, go ahead.
Now, well, I have a couple. So the slide that really, well, there are several slides that are worthy of focus, but having spent the time in all 8 of those utility committee meetings and all the committee meetings this year that have involved Councilmember Martinez Bravo, and the hours and hours that we have spent as a committee going through this in what are really, I don't really like the scenarios, but on the other hand, you have to think about it from a stewardship standpoint and a responsibility standpoint for the infrastructure. So I want to compliment you on all the work that you've done. The committee has spent hours and hours, and finally we said, okay, we need to take this to the entire council, and then we all got together last month and discussed this in a very lengthy meeting. I mean, I don't like the scope of the increases, but it is, we have to be responsible in terms of taking the approach in terms of our infrastructure. There's only one bone that I want to pick with you, and it's something that I actually wake up sometimes about 3 a.m. and going, with respect to the water reclamation plant, I don't even think of it as the elephant in the room. I was trying to think of another, it's like the mastodon, because it's bigger, and we had, originally the plant was built in 1959. We've had 3 upgrades over the years, but just in 2022 dollars, thinking about a public works project for the city that is $145 million is just staggering. It's by far the largest we have had, but you have to plan for it responsibly. And part of it is going to be in terms of rates and what we can do relative to financing and having the rates sufficient to incur that kind of indebtedness. So, and the fact of the matter is the plant is reaching the end of its useful life, 5 to 10 years from now, pursuant to the master plan that we spent so much time and staff spent so much time working, and our consultants spent so much time working on. So when the time comes to make a motion, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to do that, and I would move staff recommendation.
Did you just move?
Yeah, I'm sorry. And let me just clarify, I'm not happy to make that motion, but I'm going to make that motion because it's a responsible thing to do.
Before we do that motion?
Sure.
Mike? Yeah, I think it's also important, none of any of us are, have a discomfort for what we have to do here, but, if you go back to the discussion we had about the increased costs in our chemicals here, we are dealing with an inflation in this. Since I've been on the council, we've always tried to keep our water and sewer rates somewhere in the middle compared to our brethren next door to us and throughout the county. I think we've done a pretty good job with that, and if everything goes, we'll see, but I think the staff came up and the committee came up with a plan of action here to try to keep us in that form. So I think that's important to try to stay where we've been and have that unwritten kind of focus on that. And I want to just thank. I know there was a lot of committee hours here and a lot of staff, and Kevin, with your group, we've had a long history with your firm too. So again, we'll start the process here and stay tuned. Yeah.
Madam Mayor? So I came to council in December, and I think if there's one item that really increases my anxiety is the wastewater plant and knowing how much money's going to have to go into that. And this weekend when we had the hurricane, and I knew that staff was monitoring the wastewater plant to make sure there weren't any leaks or cracks, that elevated my anxiety as well. And I think it's important for us to be responsible and not to act when there is an emergency, but act in a way that we can do this, invest in our infrastructure in a responsible manner. And I think this is exactly what the city of Camarillo is doing. And I think you made a motion, and I will second that.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Please vote. And that passes unanimously with one abstention.
Thank you. Just real quick, I wanted to add for the public that there are some additional information available on the website. There's both of the rate study reports that support these proposed rates. There's a frequently asked questions section that will be updated throughout this process. And there is an online bill calculator for folks to come in, taking some information from their water or sewer bill and putting in the amount used. They can quickly see what the current rates are, what their current bill is, and what the proposed bills would be.
Thank you.
Madam, I'll need a motion too for the Cam San District
you will.
when it's appropriate.
I'll move the approval. I'll move the suggested action.
Thank you.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Did you get the motion and the second? Okay. So with no further discussion, please vote. That passes 4-1 with one absent. So with no further agendized item coming before the Cam San District, I will close the Cam San District and adjourn.
Brings us to the end of our agenda as well. But we're going to not close because we're going back into closed session.
Yes, and if I could just for the record state that in closed session this evening, we were able to get to items B and C listed on the city council agenda, and there was no reportable action taken, as well as the sanitary district item A, and there was no reportable action taken on that item, but we are going to go back into closed session on to item A. And if there's any reportable action, I will make that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and with that, we will recess.